You are now experiencing our community, our responsibility, Racine, with me, your host, Monteazul Cruz Seymoursr, better known to you as Monty the Magnificent. Today, I actually have I have a great pleasure of introducing you to my guest. Adwoa Asentu is a poet. She's an artist. She owns her own business. She's local. She teaches in the Milwaukee Racine area, K4 and K5. Right now in Milwaukee, she's working in K4 and K5. So let's bring in Adwoa.
Hi.
Hey, I'd like to thank you for taking your time today and meeting with us. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm blessed any day I wake up. I like people to know that that's a true feeling for me. I am grateful every day that, I'm alive and I'm moving and I'm talking and living. Right now in this day and age, we have to be grateful for that.
Yeah.
There's, so much. There's so much in our lives that could be much worse than what they are. That I'm grateful for when I do wake up.
Yes.
We've had quite a few conversations over the last couple of weeks, thanks to Andre Bright. And as you remember, Andre and I were actually interviewing last time, and during the interview is when Jacob Blake was shot. And so we had ended our interview, and then I came back live immediately because of that. And, I remember talking to Andre and the amount of respect that he had for you and love that he had for you was just so amazing. And it's infectious when somebody cares about somebody and respects someone and they give him that, and he's like, bro, you got to talk to her, bro. You got to call her. You got to get her on the show.
I really, really appreciate that. Shout out to Andre. Him and I were in Black Student Union together for a few years at UW Parkside. We did a lot of great work together within that organization. So just to have somebody, advocating for you and encouraging others to give you opportunities is a blessing. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I really like Andre. I've come to feel that, even though we just interviewed and we've only talked on the phone a couple dozen times, he's definitely someone I'd love to have in my circle as a friend. And I'm enjoying how our friendship is growing, right? So I'm really geeked about looking into your perspective on the issues that we're dealing with here in the Racine and Kenosha, Milwaukee area. But before we get into all that, I just want to know a little bit about you, and I want my viewers to hear a little bit about you, where you come from, how long you've been in the Racine area. I know you come back and forth from Racine to Milwaukee, and how long you've been doing that, and how would you describe your path to becoming an artist and a teacher?
Yeah, well, I was born and raised in Racine. I went to Waterwoods, Gilmore, Horlick, Northside. My grandma actually came to Racine in, I believe it was like the 70s. So kind of the latter part of that whole Great Migration movement where you had a lot of Black people coming from the South to come up north for industrial jobs and factory jobs. So my grandma came up here. Some of her brothers and sisters were already up here, and she worked at Incinerator for, I don't know, until she retired.
Wow.
So yeah, she really paved the way for our family to come here. Right now I'm in Milwaukee. I've been in Milwaukee for maybe 3 or 4 years now. Been teaching for 3 years. What led me to being an artist? Well, I just say I come from a very creative family. My grandma was a poet. She also wrote plays. She did a lot of plays in the Racine area at the Theater Guild. So seeing her, a woman who did not graduate from high school due to racism and issues with integration. Like when their school was integrated, she dealt with a lot of bullying and harassment and stuff, so she wasn't even able to finish high school. So to see her use her creative abilities and her life experiences to tell stories and to, you know, express herself and share that with others, that was really inspiring. And then my mom as well, she's very creative. Um, I ended up finding out probably, I was probably 23. I'm 27 now, but 23 or 24 when I found out that my granddad's father was an artist. Um, he used to paint, do murals, all different type of things. So just having that bit of family history, it really, like I didn't know that when I started painting and drawing. I started drawing at a very young age. So I think that a lot of our gifts and abilities, they're, you know, ancestral, they're in our DNA. And it's really like when I'm creating and when I'm, you know, sharing my art, it's really homage to them and to the gifts that they instilled in me. Yeah.
What do you think inspires your creativity? What inspires your artwork? Where does it come from inside?
My life experiences. I'm inspired by literally everything. Like everything inspires me. I have a notepad in my phone full of ideas and poems and just little things I write because I'm so inspired by life, the good and the bad, the dark and the beautiful. Um, and I guess what pushes me to share my art is I just feel like God doesn't give us things for no reason. You know, He gives us, well, I don't even want to say He, but God, our Creator, gives us ideas and things to share them with others, to inspire them, to spark something in others. So I just feel like I have a responsibility to share, you know, what's inside of me, I guess.
So, so you moved forward and became a business owner and started your own business. If I walked into Asentu Art, what would I see?
Well, you wouldn't be able to walk into Asentu Art because I don't have an actual storefront.
Okay.
But if I showed you my art, I think you would see um, expressions of Black culture. Um, you would see me. I don't know. And I also, the thing about art is, yes, I have a certain intention in creating it, but the artist creates the art, but the person viewing it, it might mean something completely different to them. So I like for people to, you know, interpret my art sometimes without knowing maybe what I was thinking when I created it. But a lot of what I create is, I guess, what you would maybe label Afrocentric. Um, yeah, I just like to paint whatever inspires me. A lot of times my paintings are inspired by dreams. Um, just
I
different,
know all about that.
yeah, just different things that come into my mind's eye that I feel like, you know, again, it's almost like channeling information and channeling visuals and allowing myself to be a vessel for this to flow through. I
Yeah,
feel like I'm getting off topic from your question,
absolutely not.
but yeah,
As an artist myself, right? Sometimes people will view my artwork, and some of it will be ugly to them and upsetting. Right? It'll be morbid or dark, and I try to impart to them the knowledge that when I drew it, there was a part of me I needed to get out because it was holding me back or it was hurting me. Right? When we talk about working through painful situations, I would use my artwork and my written work to work myself through pain. Right? That inner turmoil that. Um, I think there's a lot of, and I'm not sure, but in my experiences over the last 20 years, I think there's a lot of pain that Black and brown people feel that we don't understand. And it, for me, it was from childhood on. I had this feeling inside of myself of a lack of worth, right? A lack of value. And so for me, my artwork helped me work through those feelings. And so exactly what you're saying, when people look at them, they'll be like, oh my God, well, why would you draw that? Mm-hmm. And then I would tell them, and I would show them, how the painting pulled me out of that feeling or out of that process. And then it's beautiful to them. They're like, oh, well, wow. While the whole time it was beautiful to me. Mm-hmm. Right? The whole time it was meaningful to me.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I often say my art is my therapy, because even just the process of allowing myself to just sit and be and release without judgment, without and I would say that's a big thing that art taught me, is to not be a perfectionist, to just allow things to be. But yeah, it's definitely a therapeutic process. And also what you said too about the self-worth aspect of it. A lot of us growing up, when we see art or when we think about art or when we're taught art, it's from a very Eurocentric lens. So we go into churches and we see white angels, and we look at Picasso, just these different, European artists that have been put on the pedestal. And our art, it's considered tribal or primitive, and I think, it's just power in taking back those, or I guess reshaping those, some of those ideas that have been planted in our minds about what's beautiful.
Right. Absolutely. So you've been teaching now for several years. With this year's virtual learning, how has that affected you as a teacher? And how do you think it's affecting your students?
Yeah, well, just to give a little bit more background on the teaching, when I first started going to Parkside, I was probably 20 or 21 when I started working for after school program. So I was able to be in a lot of different Racine unified schools, and then once I graduated, I started working for a substitute teaching agency. I did spend 1 year under a contract at a school, and I did realize that it is better for me to be a sub, because I think a lot of times when you're a teacher and your views are seen as radical, even though some of my views, I don't see them as radical, when you're within a institutionalized setting, a lot of times teaching your history or including your culture or whatever is seen as radical. So being a sub really gave me the freedom of being able to go to, different schools in the area without the threat of losing my job because of my views or whatever. But yeah, so right now I'm doing K4, K5, and as you can imagine, it is difficult virtually, because at that age, they haven't even been in a school setting. They're not used to just certain procedures or whatever that come with a learning environment. So to try to foster that virtually it is difficult. The biggest concern for me has been, and I will say, like, I do enjoy teaching from home, but I also feel like it is a disadvantage, because we need that human interaction. We need, like, I want my students to be able to see me organically opening up a book and reading it versus looking at a screen and, spending so much time plugged into technology. Um,
What subject do you teach?
one thing that you said, what subject?
Yeah.
K4, K5, it's math, literacy, um, science, social emotional learning. So it's everything.
Mm.
Um, and also being a sub, that's another thing I've loved about being a substitute teacher is I've been able to work with all age groups. I've worked with K4 up to 12th grade, just about every subject. Um, but yeah, another thing, yeah, what I was saying about the virtual learning, one thing that just keeps coming to my mind is it being equitable. We have a lot of students who haven't even been able to join yet because they don't have a computer. Um, there's a lot of schools doing all that they can to get technology to families, to get hotspots to families so they can have internet. Um, but you got to remember, our education system is already inequitable. It already does not service the needs of all of our students. So now it's like I feel like it could create a greater wedge between those that succeed and those that are not able to succeed within our
Yeah, I
education.
can't imagine how hard it is. My cousin, my cousin, and a former guest on the show is Angelina Cruz. She's the union steward for the Teachers Association in Racine and Kenosha. And, getting anything is difficult for them. It seems like teachers have to struggle for every little bit they get for their students, and every little bit they can get to support themselves.
Right,
And I still know teachers who teach for our Racine Unified, and they don't have enough money to afford Wi-Fi at their house,
right,
and yet they're expected to teach virtual learning. So now
right,
she's having to go to McDonald's or somewhere
right,
she can, right? And these are the people who are teaching our children, and yet we don't, we're not even affording them enough money in their paycheck to have Wi-Fi at home. And it's funny because I was watching some congressional hearings. So I spent a lot of time watching congressional hearings. I'm a centralist, so I'm not one side or the other. But a lady was talking, and they were discussing the congressmen's all of their yearly budget for furniture. And did you know that the yearly budget for a congressman's furniture is $48,000?
look,
That's more. That's 4 times more than our poverty level.
look, and people mad about people burning property. I'm
I
saying
mean,
it's a slap in the face.
absolutely. $48,000 just to buy furniture every year. That's a yearly salary they get. That's a yearly budget they get for furniture. For furniture. I've spent most of my life, childhood on, in a household that's earned less than $15,000 a year with 4 children and 2 adults, right? So most of my life, we grew up making, on average, $7,000 to $11,000 a year for a yearly income for a family of 6, right? From Los Angeles and then here, and we give them basically 50 G's a year for furniture.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
no, it's and our teachers can't even get a living wage on a normal on a normal basis.
Right.
So
And
as
then
you
also, go ahead.
no, you go ahead, hon.
No, I'm just gonna say also just thinking about, teachers and students. Some people have domestic violence situations at home or they live somewhere where it's just they're not able to work from home or learn from home. So I really think it's just such a messed up predicament. But I really think the future is going to be community schooling. I know that everybody is not able to homeschool. Some people they're working during that time or whatever. But I am seeing in a lot of different communities and overseas people utilizing community schooling where like one family is kind of the hub for other children to come in. and just create our own community-based learning environments. But yeah, it sucks right now. It really does.
So I know you're very involved with our community. I know that our community has been a passion of yours. Just through what we've talked about and all of your bio and what we've looked at, you've spent most of your life trying to build a better existence for those around you. With our current situation in Kenosha, again, we've seen another human being being shot from behind, or not being handled in the way that we think would be appropriate. Why do you think this? Why do you think these incidents continue to occur? What's your opinion on that?
I think that they continue to occur because a tree will continue to produce the same fruit. And America, the tree of America, is the roots are racism, genocide, violence, terrorism. These are the things that this country was founded upon. What we're dealing with is nothing new. It's like a reoccurring nightmare. I think that things haven't changed because those with power and privilege don't want it to change, because they know that if things change, then that means that they'll have to give up power. They'll have to give up something, and their power, their material wealth, and whatever, that all being at the expense of Black people, Native people, Indigenous people. That's what America is. I know we want to believe that it's the land of the free, home of the brave. It's not. It never has been. That has always been an illusion,
Yeah, no, I know. So, as a descendant of the Apache people, and somebody who is very tied into my Native American religion side, I had a gentleman talk to me about, well, if the Democrats did this or the Democrats did that, and, I have friends on the other side who say, well, if the Republicans weren't in control, this couldn't have happened. And, it kind of amuses me and angers me at the same time, because we're being played over these party lines, right? We're being played over these things. And so I say, well, let's stop that conversation about Democrat or Republican. Let's look all the way back as far as we can in history for recorded incidents of police brutality. Now, let's look at what president was in charge and what House or Congress was in charge during them. Oh, wait a minute. This happened under Democratic, Republican, and independent presidents, right?
Right.
The numbers never lessened. They've only grown, which tells me it's not a Democratic party problem. It's not a Republican Party problem. It's not an independent independent party problem. It's a systemic problem of our system.
Exactly.
Right? Our entire system. I don't care if you're a Democrat. I don't care if you're a Republican. I don't care if you're an independent. Right. It's happened everyone's reign. It's happened under everyone's watch. What are we going to do to address it?
Right. Now, it's fascism, and it bothers me that.
Say it again.
Fascism.
For those of you, let me stop it real quick. For those of you protesting Antifa and calling them terrorists, I'd like to explain to you what Antifa stands for. It's the descendant of a group from Germany that stood against fascism. So for those of you who don't know what a fascist is a Nazi. A fascist is someone we as Americans have stood against since fascism started, right? Since it became a group thing. Those of us who claim to be great patriots and all this other bull crap, and yet you think it's appropriate to hold court in the streets, that's a communistic belief in itself. If you think it's appropriate to murder our citizens in the streets, you're not really an American, because you don't support our Constitution. Our Constitution says we have a right to a fair trial. We have a right to the presumption of innocence until found guilty. And after a man or woman serves their time, they have the right to rebuild their lives. So for all of my viewers who tout to me afterwards and hit me up in my DMs and say, well, he had a criminal record, or, well, he was this or he was that. Listen, if you're a so-called...
Go ahead. No, I want you to finish your thought. Go ahead.
For those of you who call yourselves American patriots and say you love this country and you love what it stands for, then follow the Constitution, respect the Constitution, and apply it equally. The Constitution of the United States applies to every single citizen in this country, whether they're black, whether they're white, whether they're Mexican, whether they're Indian, whether they're Japanese, Chinese, Portuguese. I don't give a crap what color their skin is. That Constitution applies to them. And no matter what the circumstances are, you have to give them their rights, their constitutional rights. They have a right to speak out. They have a right to their freedom of religion. They have a right to be heard in court. They have a right to be innocent until we prove they're not innocent. It's too much nowadays that people say, I'm going to take this stance and I'm going to stand on this line. And, then they get the whole chest beaten. And, anybody who doesn't agree with me isn't a real American, or everyone who agrees with...
The amount of brainwashing that is that's in what people see as patriotic or patriotism is just like, as a human being, you should be disturbed by what's going on in the world. As a human being, people's human rights are being taken away. There are whole communities that don't have access to clean water.
Michigan is still
like this. These are basic human rights. Just getting back to the police thing too, because I feel like language is very important. We've been seeing a lot of calls to defund the police. That's great. A lot of calls to reform. I say abolish. And I'm very intentional with that word, because I believe that when the whole system of slavery, chattel slavery, was abolished, our system of policing should have been abolished with it, because it was created within that same system. So policing, or police officers, the origin of that is slave patrols. Slave patrolmen were hired by plantation owners to keep their property, which was Black people, Black lives, to keep their property on the plantation. If they ran away, their job was to go catch them and bring them back. And they also used tactics of intimidation. They used violence. They used terror to maintain a level of control. And that's exactly what they still do today. When Mike Brown was shot in Ferguson, when he was murdered by police, one of the things that really stuck with me was how long they left his body laying on the ground. I think it was close to 5 hours. I know it was at least 3 hours. But it disturbed me so much. And when you look at the visuals of it, you see like they were inside of a neighborhood with a lot of apartments or whatever. So everybody is watching this. And it immediately made me think of the Willie Lynch letter and just different practices that were used on plantations by oppressors to instill fear into the enslaved people. And one of them was, taking the strongest Black man on the plantation, taking him in front of everyone and raping him and beating him. Just these same things that we need to do. So yeah, I'm very intentional about the word abolish, because I feel like we just want to hold on to certain things because I don't know, because they're maybe without it worse. I don't know. I think we just need a new
So if we abolish the police, what do we do from there? How do how do we move on, and what do we do to protect our community from that point?
We create systems of policing ourselves. I don't even want to use the word policing, but community protection. I think that Minnesota, what's going on there in Minneapolis, they're kind of giving us a blueprint for how to do that. But there are other communities that are sovereign, that are able to protect their own. And I'm trying to think of a different word to use other than policing. But that is important because, we have predators in our communities. We have people who take advantage, who seek to harm. So there does need to be something in place. But I think it just needs to be understood that the current system of policing, like, they're not created to protect us. It's to protect white people and their property and their wealth, and to keep us contained.
Right.
They're in the ghetto or in the jails. Those are the new plantations. So, yeah.
So in your life, what are some of the areas in Racine, and what are some of the issues in Racine that are most concerning to you? Like, what things do you find most pressing that we should work on as a community to change and to better our own community?
Well, Racine specifically, I'm seeing now there's a lot more diversity within the art scene, which I think is much needed. Racine has a lot of food deserts. Racine is also, there was a study done, I believe, in 2014 by the Annie E. Casey Foundation. And when the study came out, there was a lot of articles covering the study that said Wisconsin was the worst state to raise a Black child. And in the study, they just looked at different factors such as employment rate, graduation rate, poverty, incarceration. And they did it for not just, it was like Black, white, Latino, Asian populations. And the results of that study was that Wisconsin was within the nation was the worst state in every category for Black people. So the highest unemployment rate, highest poverty rate, highest incarceration rate. Wisconsin was also the #1 state for the advancement of white children. So white children had the highest graduation rate, highest wealth, income, whatever, that stuff. So yeah, and it's also another study that I saw. I don't remember when it came out, but it said that Racine had the highest unemployment rate in the nation. And it's just really, like, I guess, ironic to me that, like, even my own family came from Mississippi, which in that day and time was considered the worst state, or one of the worst states for Black people to be, because they have some of the worst plantations and, most violent, Jim Crow laws. So for them to come here to Wisconsin in hopes of their future generations having a better life, and now Wisconsin is the worst state, it's just like a sick joke, So yeah, as far as Racine, I feel like there are a lot of different grassroots organizations that are emerging, some that have been around for a while, but I think there are some that we need to apply more pressure to, and really get them to use their platform and their funds to really push the status quo.
So Angelina Cruz actually made a comment on here. Angelina had said community accountability and restorative practices. Let's see if Angelina, are you still on? And if you are, could you expand on that? In fact, we could probably bring her on if she's interested in coming on and talking. So, community accountability and restorative practices. So I was a part of a restorative justice program which I was very impressed with. When we take the control out of the hands of strangers, right, and put the justice system in the hands of neighbors, of communities, things always change, right? And in California, they've taken quite a few steps to move forward with that. As far as you were talking about unemployment, Racine's unemployment rate hit the 20% at one point this year. In fact, let me look at that. In May of this year, Racine's unemployment rate was 14.3, and the national average was 9. And so you're right. If you look at the data throughout the United States, the feds keep a unemployment in the United States. So the feds keep track of the unemployment rate, and they keep track of the criminal statistics, is what they call it. And if you compare the two graphs to each other, right, and you'll take the unemployment rate over the last 80 years and the crime rate over the last 80 years, they almost always move up point for point, right? So every time the unemployment rate rises, the crime rate rises. Unemployment rate rises, crime rate rises. And they go point for point in almost every category. There's got to be someone who's willing to accept and acknowledge the fact that employment directly affects how we live, where we live, our lifestyles. I've been screaming for years that funding our schools based on property taxes is stupid and unfair, right? Yeah. There's a reason why one of our schools receives the best of everything while the other one of our schools is still teaching with books from the 1970s. Right. You know what I mean? So I definitely agree. My personal feelings about law enforcement vary. I have a lot of men and women in law enforcement that I respect deeply and know they care and know that their intentions have always been good and caring and kind. And it's hard for me to look at them and think that they would ever do anything that would hurt anyone, right? But this is something that I told somebody else in jest when they were like, well, that officer didn't kill someone. He fit the description of someone who did. That's something that's been used against us since I was a child. But you fit the description. And it's unfortunate because my friends in law enforcement are good human beings who got into law enforcement to make a difference in their neighborhoods, to make a difference in my community. Our chief of police is, Racine is kind of lucky in the fact that Art Howell has been very proactive in the community. He sees me on the street and his first question is anything but the same thing every time, which is, Monty, what can we do as a police department to better communicate with our community, right? So when the top says that to me, I'm always impressed with that. I'm always feeling like, at least he's asking the questions he needs to ask. The reality is, I don't know. I don't know what the police can do to become a part of our community because they've never been a part of our community.
I think there's just this desire to hold on to what people consider to be, I guess, fundamentally American. I don't know. But I feel like this is the thing. This is my thing. You can be a great person. You can do great deeds. You can be all of that. But when it comes down to it, are you going to step in when your partner pulls a gun on an unarmed woman or unarmed man or unarmed child? Are you going to step in and I feel bad for the good cops because I feel like a lot of times that what happens is they're either isolated within their job. Sometimes they're targeted and harassed or killed, or they're fired. I think that the system is too corrupt for there to be any room for reform. I know some people see that as extreme, but I feel like what we're dealing with is extreme. Like since Jacob Blake, and I just want to say too that they handcuffed this man to his hospital bed. They handcuffed this man. He's paralyzed. They handcuffed him to his hospital bed, okay? But since then, how many more people have been killed by the police just this week? I can't even, it's so many names. Like, there was a 16-year-old boy with Down syndrome who was just shot the other day. This is a regular thing. Like, and we don't, it's not always broadcasted. We don't always see the footage.
Right.
And it's just like, I don't know. I just feel like if you are a good police officer or you're a good person, quit your job and dedicate your time and energy to creating something new. And I know that seems extreme or may seem extreme to some, or that's not fair or whatever, but I just, what can we do? What are we doing? Like, we have to care enough to really be serious about change. And it's going to be uncomfortable, but necessary.
So where do we take the dialogue from that? Where do we go from there? How do we communicate with the communities around us to understand why, what, and how we feel as a community?
Well, that's one thing that I really enjoy about going to public protests and demonstrations, because when you go there, you see people from every community represented. You see all of humanity represented. So those are great spaces to talk, to make connections, and to really create safe spaces to organize and, you know, put our gifts and abilities together. And that's another thing, like, we all have something different to contribute. We all have a purpose. We all have our own specialties and gifts. And I think it's just really about creating spaces where we can utilize all of that and respect everyone's contribution to making our community better. It's easier said than done, of course, but there's definitely power in love and intention. And I think we're doing it. I think people are doing that. You know, it's so much negativity and it can be overwhelming. At times, when every time you turn on the television, it's someone getting killed. It's something traumatic. But we are sowing seeds of love and change. You know, with every good deed. So
would that be how you would suggest we work towards healing ourselves and our community? Right. So there's this huge pain in our community, and I see it all the time. And I work with men and women in the community. You know, my mother still lives in the old neighborhoods. I'm there quite often, although I don't live there anymore. You know, I moved out into suburban America, you know, to raise my daughters and now my son. But you know, that's where I'm from. That's where I spent, you know, 2/3, if not more, of my life. Well, yeah, you figure the majority of my life, I've only been in suburbia for 3 years, and I still don't like it. I got the feel of the hood. And now let me tell you something, people. You can sit on your front porch and meet every one of your neighbors at some point during the day and have discussions with them, right? You can see your kid go next door, get in trouble there, right? And know they're going to get whooped there and come home and get whooped at home, right? We know we communally discipline our children in the hood. Right out here, it's different. They'll walk past you and not look at you.
They'll call the police on your child for being playing in their own yard.
Yeah. The first time my neighbor walked past and I waved, and I went to the, hey, how you doing? What you doing today? And he went. I said, damn. See, you might have a mental disorder or something. I don't know. So I've made it a point since I've been out here that, we don't have sidewalks. So people walk through our streets out here, and I'll see people walking. I go outside to talk to them. I'll walk right up on them. Hey, how you doing today? Right? Mm-hmm. Well, what's up? You guys went over for a walk? Nice dog. Back where we grew up, that was just daily life. We talk to each other. But one of the things that I've always felt and I've always seen and I've always, it's funny now that I work with a 12-step program and I'm talking to men and women coming home from incarceration, and, we get lucky sometimes and people are willing to open up and discuss the pain that they feel inside, right? Because it's the only way to heal is to find out where that pain is and to work on it. And it's something I've lived with most of my life. And men in general, right? Men in general hide our pain, right? We have to be strong. We have to be, stoic, and, we got to be men. And so when we're able to open up to each other in our men's group and talk about the pain that we feel inside on a daily basis, what steps do you think we as a community need to take to heal that? Because I know if we're feeling pain as men, the women in our community, they have to be experiencing it even more so. It's usually them who are, again, I'm going to say the same thing I've always said. My mother was the best father I've ever had. That's commonplace in our neighborhood, where our mothers and our grandmothers take the roles of our fathers. Mm-hmm. How do we heal that pain that our children and our community feels? What steps do you think we should take to start opening up to each other so that we can heal those pains?
Yeah. There's a quote that says it's easier to heal a broken child than a broken man, or something like that. But step one, like you said, I think before you can even begin to heal, you have to have a proper diagnosis of the infection or the illness. My grandma used to always say when we'd be working in the yard, she used to have us pulling up weeds. And she would always say, you got to pull it up by the root or it's going to grow back. You can't just pull the top up. You got to pull it up by the root. And I think about that when I think about healing. Like, a lot of times we see certain things manifest in our behavior or our ways or whatever, and we kind of try to deal with that surface level thing, but we really have to be willing to get to the roots of what it is. It's sad that a lot of our ancestral practices and ancestral ways of healing are demonized. They're called witchcraft. So a lot of times we look to Western medicine for ways to heal, and it leaves us even more at a disadvantage. Not always the case, but a lot of times the case. So I think that it's important for us as a people to get back in touch with our ancestral practices. A lot of the pain that we're dealing with, yes, we have trauma in our lives. We deal with, not having a father in the household, abuse, all these different things. But we also have that layer of ancestral trauma and pain that I do believe, we carry. So it's a lot. It's a lot for us to unpack, but I'm a huge advocate of self-healing and taking time to really do that self-work and reflection to really get to the root of, that pain and trauma. But I think it's beautiful that you are, creating spaces for men to really open up to one another. There's a someone from Racine. Well, he's not from Racine. He's from Zion, but he's done a lot of work in Racine. Zaki Dara. He used to have a program called Focus on Fathers, and yeah, just that is just really important. Did a lot of important work. And yeah, like you said, women, we need that as well. We need spaces where we can um, talk about things that are specific to our experiences as Black women or indigenous women, and exchange ideas on how to heal and support each other.
Absolutely. And I know the program you're talking about. It was actually a pretty amazing program, and I'm not sure if they're still running anymore. I've been so busy that I haven't been able to do much outside work with anybody. I see Andre on here. He be sending some clapping hands and laughing faces. I don't got no. Hey, Andre, I don't have no pertinent questions from you. I see though. I'm gonna have to call him out on that. I'm always one for accountability, especially personal accountability and transparency. It's two of the most important things that I can do as a human being, to be honest with myself, right? And it's not even anything I owe anyone else. It's what I owe myself.
Yeah.
I don't hold myself accountable for my actions, regardless of who's there to see me, right? A lot of people, you can do something in a crowd. What do you do when you're alone?
Right.
He said, "What's up?" So
Yeah.
I try to hold myself accountable for my actions. As a father, man. So I got 5 babies. I got a 27-year-old who just turned 27. I got a 25-year-old son. I have a 6-year-old soon-to-be stepdaughter, and I have a 6-year-old daughter, and a 1-year-old son. And I've been alone with my daughter since she was about 2 months old. That's when we separated, and I ended up with this little life that was like this big. Audrey, she was like this big. She was like 5 pounds when I brought her home.
Wow.
And I remember being terrified. I remember looking at her and thinking that everything I did, she was going to see. Everything I said, she was going to listen to. And every mistake I met, she was going to weigh. And I remember my mother, Angela said, for the record, she's been here the whole time, but she's just making dinner. I love you. Andre, hey, I agree. Absolutely. Black women.
Well, that's something that he told me, actually, because Andre, I see his comment.
Yeah, the most
muted voices. When he reached out to me, he said, it was really important for me to connect you to Monty, because I really feel like Black women need to be heard, and Andre, he's just a stand-up guy. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, 100%. I see you just enjoyed an anniversary as well. Let's extend to him the world needs to listen. We agree, brother. So here I was with this little girl, not knowing what to do. I'm this big, dumb, stupid ogre of a guy. I'm covered in tattoos. I'm 6'3", 290 pounds, and I got this little,
little light.
This little girl, a piece of my soul, my heart. She was so precious. And I came to that turning point where I had to decide what direction I would turn in life, even though I had already been working in the community and had been working with 12-step of service work. Just because I was doing it doesn't mean, it was a part of my soul. And then I thought about my daughter looking at me as an adult when she became an adult and being disappointed in the man that I was. And so I pushed on, and with a lot of help, I was able to survive her, because she was a monster. but she's a strong-willed, beautiful little native girl who will have her voice heard no matter what, right? Like she'll stop you and she'll be like, "Wait, I'm talking."
Great. Good job.
Who you talking to for
Right,
nothing?
right.
I will squish you, you know.
She said, "You gonna listen to what I gotta say."
And for me, it's taught me so much. Man, I can't imagine how my mother did four of us by herself. Four of us. And this is a weight we put on our minority women on a regular basis. You see them walking to the bus stop to take their children to daycare, and there's three of them alone. And so she got to take them to daycare, and then she got to get to work. And then she got to work all day, hoping that they make it through daycare without being kicked for some reason, right? So then she get out of work. She's been at work for 8 hours. She got to take a bus back to the daycare, grab them babies, take them back to their home, and start over tomorrow after making them dinner and cleaning the house or whatever it is. And you know, they're making barely enough to pay the rent, let alone buy clothes, buy food, you know, pay for the fuel. I definitely think there's a huge systemic distance between poor communities and just the next level up. I'm not talking about rich communities, right? We know there's a systemic distance between us and Trump, right? That level money to our level money, like Bill Gates money to my money. But when it comes to just our poverty level people, to the next step up above them, there's a distance there that makes it almost impossible for them to communicate and to hear those plights, right? Now, when I was talking about Congress, yeah, hey, Andre, you have no idea, brother. That little girl is the boss of me.
What you're saying is really putting Sojourner Truth on my mind, and our woman. But it's just making me think about some of the disconnects, I would say, within the feminist movement. You know, just looking at the trials and the challenges that minority women or women that are poor have to deal with versus middle-aged white women, or not middle-aged, I'm sorry, middle-class white women. But also because a lot of times Black women are labeled over-aggressive, or you know, the whole angry Black woman stereotype that is placed on a lot of women, or you know, told that we're hyper masculine. I think that a lot of times these things manifest in our behavior because we've had to be. You know, we've been put in situations like where we've had to hold things down. We've had to play the role of the mother and the father, which is impossible to do. As good of a mother as you are, you can't be a father. You know, a child does need that masculine and feminine influence in their life. But yeah, I feel like it needs to be more understanding as far as, you know, the plight that a lot of women in marginalized communities go through. When I learned about, because I was raised by just my mother, father wasn't in my life, but when I learned about some of his life experiences, how connected to like the crack epidemic and drugs being pushed in our communities, it made me have more empathy for him. But it also, I guess I just saw that connection between the systemic oppression and all of that, and how it affects our households and the way that we love and the way that we experience relationships and all of that, you know. And if you think about how many Black men are incarcerated, like it's a whole population of men that are not even present in the community. They're in jail. So yeah, it leaves us vulnerable. It leaves us very vulnerable, and I think that's that's why a lot of Black women are the way that they are. Not that all Black women are, um, you know, hyper masculine, like that all of them have to deal with raising children on their own. But yeah, it's definitely a factor.
Andre, I see you commented, and I see your comment. So, how do we protect our women more, Andre? Um, this is definitely something that we should talk about. What do we need to do to protect the other half of our yin and our yang? Um, so, what are your opinions on what we can do to protect our women more? I know that I try to be here, right? That's the thing. So, we own a moving company. Me and two of my closest friends. There's a lot of outside of the home work. There's a lot of travel involved. Um, when I'm not working, I tend to stay home as often as I can. Right? I want to be here. Right? I don't want her to feel, and she feels like she has to do it enough on her own now because
Right.
I'm work so much. Let me be here when I'm not working. Then you know what I mean. Unless I have to go, and there's always that you got to run here, run there. I try to let her go to the store whenever we need to because I know she can't stand, living her life with nothing. I think she's gonna start talking goo goo gaga talk because all she does is take care of kids now. She's not working anymore because of the COVID-19, so she got to do their schooling. She got to look after them. She's doing the traditional home mom role, but the protection of our women is important. I don't think there's any woman out there weaker than me in the sense of spiritually, emotionally, and I don't want my female viewers to feel like I feel that they need protection in that sense. But we all need each other's help, right? I need to be protected as well. I need my partner to make me feel safe. I need my partner to make me feel secure.
Right.
What do you think we can do more, Adwoa, to make our women feel protected? And, what steps do we need to take as men to make that happen?
Mm-hmm. Just because we can do it on our own doesn't mean we always want to do it on our own, okay? It's nice to have help. And I think just what you said that you're doing right now to aid your partner is important. I think it's important to shatter a lot of these gender roles that we've created that are just nonsense, that leave a lot of the load of caretaking on women. I think a lot of us have seen the women in our lives have to do it on their own, so that becomes normalized, So, we as men and women, we have both masculine and feminine energy, So men are just as important in the caretaking and nurturing, with the children. That's just as important as what the mother gives. Being able to cook. Okay, if you are a human being, you need to know how to cook. Okay, I love cooking. But I want a partner that's gonna cook for me as well. I like to eat too. Maybe I like to sit back and relax.
I'm not even gonna lie to you. So we come from a traditional Native American Mexican home, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I was young, 9 or 10, my grandmother had come out to California to stay with us with our grandparents. And her and my mother were teaching me how to cook and do laundry and iron. And I'm the only boy, right? So I'm like, I'm a man. The fuck you need to teach me how to cook for, right? My grandmother looked down at me with this beautiful face and she goes, "Oye, mijo, I love you so much, but you're so ugly. I don't know if you'll ever find a wife, and I don't want you to smell bad or starve to death."
Oh my gosh.
So
she kept it. Whoa.
Kept it real. I was an ugly little boy. I'm okay with that.
That's not nice. That's not nice.
Hey, I think I've grown into my looks much better in my elderly years. I think I've matured and I look much better now than I did as a kid. But it's funny because my partner and her and I got together, and she moved in, and I did all of the cooking in the house for like a year. Right? I cook. Now, when I say I cook, my brother's birthday was the other day. I made him and my oldest daughter 16-hour ribs, nice and slow cooked. Some meatloaf burgers because I don't like burgers with no flavor. So I made some meatloaf burgers and some brats, and we did them on the grill. Or I'll do like some 12-hour tacos where we cook that meat down nice and long. Girl, listen. You want it to be soft and tender, right? And then you take that meat and you fry it a little bit and get it crispy on the outside. So I come home, I'm on the road, I come home and I'm late, right? It's going to be like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock before I get home. And I call her and she called me and she says, well, do you want me just to make something for dinner before you get home? Because I know, you've been on the road for 4 days. I was like, yeah, man. So I'm expecting boxed macaroni like she give the kid and some chicken nuggets or something. I got home, she had made a whole roast beef.
Wow.
Potatoes and cut carrots and onion. And, it was just like a spread. And I'm like, where did you buy this? I made it. The whole time you could cook.
Right.
The whole time. Come on now. Go home.
Finesse me just a little bit.
I'm leaving you. I was like, I've been cooking the whole time. She was like, but I like your food. I get it.
I'm not mad at her. I am not mad at her for that. She probably was in a few relationships. She was doing all the cooking. She just needed a year off,
She over here laughing at me right now, smiling.
No, but just to answer your question, how we can better protect each other. And I just want to say too, I think that we had the whole gender war thing. It's like we know that we are equal as men and women. We are both human beings. We're equal, but also we are different, and that's okay. I believe that the man, woman, and child, to me, that's divinity. That's the Holy Trinity. You need the man and the woman to create life. Men are physically, most of the times, stronger, bigger than women. I think that our Creator designed it that way for a reason. I think that it is the responsibility of men to protect women to a certain degree, within our communities. One big thing I would say is men be open to fostering platonic relationships with women without the expectation of them dating you or, whatever. It's important to have genuine friendships and genuine friends that you can call on as a woman. Say, I need to go to a mechanic and I need to make sure that they're not going to swindle me. I want to feel comfortable calling up a male friend, knowing that he's not going to, want to take advantage of me or want something in return. And I'm blessed to have male friends that I can call on. But yeah, being open to platonic relationships and really protecting women without looking for anything in return, not just women that you're attracted to, Yeah,
I find that all the time. Men will hit me up just because they think I'm cute, and then it's like, no. You're right though. So I used to be a mechanic. I'll be a mechanic my whole life, and I have a lot of female friends who will call me ahead of time and say, hey, I have a problem with my car. What should it cost for me to have it fixed? I know you don't work on cars no more because of your shoulder. Physically, I don't want to put myself in any more jeopardy with my shoulder messed up. And, I'll give them a price and they'll tell me, well, they're asking for double that. And then I'll call the shop. It's funny. You hear it all the time. I'll call the shop and be like, how much to have this fixed? And they'll be like, oh, $150. I'm like, well, you just told this lady $300.
Right.
Yeah, I hear you.
We're vulnerable to certain things just because, and then even that's a conditioning thing. Like when I have children, if I have daughters, I plan on teaching them the basics, at least how to do an oil change and stuff like that.
Change the brakes, do an oil change,
If
change a tire.
right, those are things that if you have a car, you should know. You know,
Spark plugs. I tell everybody, you should be able to change your spark plugs, do your oil, change the tire, and do your brakes, unless they're drum brakes, and then it's a little bit more difficult. It's a little bit more in depth. Take it to a professional. Don't mess around.
yeah,
Drum brakes are really they're a nightmare. That's not something you want to mess your car up for. But regular brakes, just rotor brakes, changing out a set of pads is relatively easy as long as you watch YouTube. I tell people all the time, listen, you're going to pay me $150 to do something you can do yourself. Watch YouTube.
right.
They show you everything. I fixed my furnace last winter. I'm not an HVAC technician. I don't know nothing about furnaces. I watched the video. I took a look at what I was doing. I watched the video again, and I fixed my furnace.
Yeah, YouTube is a great resource.
Right. But Adwoa, I was. So we've had a couple talks, man. I'm so glad that I accidentally met Andre, and he brought you and himself into my life. I could talk to Andre for hours, the same as last time we were gonna have that quick call, we were on for like an hour and 10 minutes. We were talking about, okay, we gotta hurry up. I'm just gonna 5 seconds, and then you got into it, I got into it.
Right.
That soul, that feeling, that vibration. That's what I want our community to feel when they see each other. The pain that we're going through as a whole is real, and it's sad because there's so many people who can't see it. They can't see the despondency. They can't see the disenfranchisement. They can't see the desperation of people looking. And we were just talking before we were on camera. I didn't participate in riots. I won't participate in a riot. I've taken vows of peace as a Buddhist. That I find sacred and important. I will never lift my hands in anger if possible. I'll protect those who are innocent. But there was something so important written on the wall of the parole office in Kenosha that got the least amount of play. And there's one little news clip of them driving through Kenosha after the riots, and somebody had painted, "Can you hear us now?" Right? And so for those of you who are watching, who and a lot of my friends don't share the same point of views as me, and I'm okay with that. I love them anyways, as long as they respect each other. For those of you who don't think there's a systemic problem in the United States, that should say it in itself. You still haven't heard us. You still haven't heard those of your brothers and sisters, your citizens, your fellow citizens who are standing there and screaming, "Can you hear me now? This is how I feel inside." Now,
Right.
if you can't recognize that, I don't know what can be done.
Was it Martin Luther King who said rioting is the language of the unheard? It's a consequence. It's a consequence of violence. It's a consequence of genocide. The way that, and I was in Kenosha. The way that they shape the narrative around protesters, and I want to stop using that word, because really the people out there are just good people. These are everyday regular people who are fed up. They're sick and tired. Everybody has, their own stories to tell about incidences with Kenosha Police Department and, racism in this area of their life or whatever. So we're all experiencing it. And when I see people talking about, and even the whole grouping of everybody as Black Lives Matter, like, that's a saying that it's a statement that has become a universally understood message. You know, everybody who says that is not affiliated with the actual organization Black Lives Matter, but just the way that protesters are labeled as violent or creating chaos, it's like, okay, you guys are definitely living in an illusion, because there's chaos all around us. You know, the stuff we deal with on a regular basis is violent. Um, if Black people were as violent as we are painted or portrayed to be, there will be lot more dead cops. There will be a lot more, a lot more violence. But that's not what you see. You know, you see people really just wanting their voice to be heard. When I hear just some of the comments on rioting and looting and destroying property, it again makes me think about what this country was founded upon. And this is stolen land. You know, businesses and corporations steal from people every day. So it's just a certain level of hypocrisy that's just, you know, it's draining. But you know, everybody's not going to get it. So it's good for us to just use our energy to, you know, not trying to convince people of our humanity or even demand things from them, but to create new ways and new.
So you just said something that struck me right there. And I don't think if you understood when you said it, you feel like you have to convince our fellow citizens of your humanity, right? That's something we should feel everybody understands we're born with.
Right.
If we have to expel and expend energy convincing others of our humanity, our base humanity,
right,
that we're human beings with emotions and feelings and thoughts and fears and goals and dreams, right? How far have we come as a country if there's still human beings who feel like they need to show people we're human?
Right.
Yeah, that's heartbreaking.
It is.
You know, I understood why it was a necessity for men and women when I was incarcerated, right? So there's a very common point of view in the United States that men and women who are incarcerated are animals, and they call us that, right? They call them that, you know. Well, the animals in a cage. They're treated that way. The men and women who are incarcerated, they're treated as if they're animals in a cage, and they're given this promise by our country that when they come home, they'll come home and they'll start over and they'll be forgiven. But then they're tagged with this label as felons and ex-cons, and now they're denied jobs that will support them. They're denied in many circumstances, especially for the Black and brown communities where drug convictions are highest.
Right.
Any form of assistance. Oh wait, you have a drug, charge. You can't get SNAP benefits. You can't get school loans to go to school and to educate yourself and to bring yourself out of that neighborhood that made you feel like you had to sell drugs to survive in that neighborhood. And do you know who Trevor Noah is?
Yes.
So I love him. He's an amazing human being. He was discussing the fact, and I was watching it. I actually sent him an email because I'm one of those believers that somebody will answer me at some point in time if I bug them enough. And he had discussed somebody saying, well, listen, we had a Black president. Or what about Michael Jordan? Or what about this young Black man who made it out of the hood? If we have to use the exemption, right, to the rule as proof, then we know that proof is unfounded. That's not true, right? just because one person out of a million has made it to the presidency, or to become a legend or a star, doesn't mean that the bias isn't there for the rest, right? One of my friends said something to me when I was discussing the fact on one of my feeds about the three young men who were shot, two who died and one who was maimed in Kenosha. He was like, well, who cares? Look at their records. They're criminals anyways. This is a friend of mine whose home I've been into, who's been in my home, who's, we've spent many times talking and spending time together. We're close human beings. And I said, well, what about me? Do I deserve to die in the street?
Right.
Do I deserve to be shot down like a dog?
On what basis are we judging criminality?
Right.
Because we're judging it through the lens of colonization. Well, it means nothing, because as a white man, you are able to get away with murder and not have a criminal record. The justice system will is more likely to advocate for you, or to expunge that from your record or whatever.
Come on, absolutely.
Yeah, it's like the whole idea of what's criminal and who are criminals. It's just racism, because
what shook me to my core was the response of, but you're one of the good ones. And I stopped and I paused because it was painful, because now I understood my friend was a racist.
Right.
He might not have understood. He might not know he was a racist, but I understood the racism embedded in that statement at its core. You're one of the good ones. I know many of a racist who has a black friend, because they tell me every time, I have a black friend. I have a Mexican friend.
I think
a Chinese friend, or a friend who speaks Spanglish, right? What the fuck does that mean?
Right.
I cut the feed. I stopped speaking completely. There was no response for me to have that didn't lead to violence, even verbal violence, right? I'm not going to assault him. I'm not going to hurt him. I'm not going to create more pain in the wake of the pain that we're in. But the pain that I felt shook me, right? It made me feel less as a human being. That's the best way I can say it. Not as a man, but as a human being. It made me feel less. It made me feel as if, I have to be judged on a case-by-case and person-by-person basis on whether or not I'm good enough to be a part of this conversation.
Right.
I didn't spend the last 8 years of my life struggling to be a good human being and provide a safe environment for my children and my family and my friends. I haven't spent the last 8 years sacrificing my life so that others could do better, and giving as much as I could, every chance I could, whether it be money, food, time, friendship, sacrifice. I haven't done all that in someone's eyes, so I'm not good enough to be a human being. I should be shot in the street like a dog because I have a criminal history as a juvenile, as a teenager. I haven't committed a crime since I was 19. I'm 44 years old. At one point in life, do we look past our past and start looking at our present and respecting each other for what we're doing now?
Right.
What kind of human being am I now? Does that count?
Right.
But
it's disgusting. It's disgusting to see victims of police brutality be put on trial and their criminal record put all over social media, but you don't see the record or the mistakes or the skeletons of the police officer who did it. The 17-year-old who killed Anthony Hubert and JoJo. I can't think of his whole name. I'm sorry, and then injured the other man. I saw pictures of him at a community cleanup, and some other little Boy Scout looking pictures, being posted, and it's just like, wow, this boy was a terrorist. In my mind, that's how I see it. He was aspiring to be a police officer probably because he sees the way that police officers can kill people with impunity. It's just sick. It's sick. And yeah, it's sad that people hold these different views. And a lot of times they are unconscious of it. And that's what I say a lot of times with racist or racism. Like, a lot of people are very triggered by that word, and they immediately become defensive, and they're like, well, I'm not a racist, and I have a black friend, and I don't say the N-word or whatever, but not realizing that you don't have to do any of that to be a racist, because it goes beyond these blatant forms of racism. It is literally embedded into everything in our society. So all of us have been, when I say racism, because a lot of times people are confused and they think, it's like, white people hating black people and black people hate white people. No, racism to me is the ideology of white supremacy and black inferiority. And wherever you see colonization, you see this. You see a caste system created based off of skin pigmentation, anti-blackness. And all of us have been embedded with these different ideas. All of this has been implanted into our subconscious mind. So you have to be really willing to do that work, to unpack those biases and those mistruths that you've been fed all your life.
Oh, I see Andre in the waiting room. I just now. Hey, I got a little private chat on the side here. Our producer sends me, and she's like, he's on his way. He's here. Bring Andre in. Introduce Andre. Andre in waiting area. He wants to join the conversation. And then she says, she is incredible. That's you. That's what she's talking about, you. Andre, come on in. Are you still with us, Andre?
Yeah, I'm still here.
I've been waiting. I've been looking. I'm like, why hasn't she brought Andre in? Where's Andre? Is he ignoring us? Making fun of me in this little feed over here on the YouTube side, talking a little jazzy. And yeah, the boss. She's the boss of my soul, bro. But Andre,
hey man, I told y'all was gonna be in for a treat, man. I told y'all.
Thank you.
I can't thank you enough for bringing her to us and bringing her into our lives. I'm definitely looking forward to exchanging artwork and poetry with her, and then just talking. There's things that she said that I haven't thought about before. Everybody doesn't understand when I do these broadcasts. I do them because I want to know everybody's opinion so we can form a basis to start our pot, right? We're starting our growth here. So we have to prepare our soil, right? So we got the pot, right? The pot is this forum. This pot is our social media ability to start speaking and being heard by masses and not just ourselves, right? This goes out. We get shares all over the country now, which has been amazing. It's been wonderful, the support we've been receiving. So our pot has been picked. And now we're placing soil into our pot so we can start sprouting seeds of growth for our communities. And it's you guys, it's your voices, right, that we need to hear most. Right? A lot of our viewers, and I talk to a lot of them back and forth. I get DMs from them constantly, and I DM them back to tell them, well, I'm sorry you didn't agree, or thank you for your support. Whatever it is. And sometimes I had one lady who just messaged me, you're fat. I was like, thank you. I'm sorry. I'll go on a diet. Right. Listen, I'm 300 pounds. I'm 6'3".
I'm solid.
Right. I'm gonna have a taco for dinner and a piece of cake for dessert. I don't care, right? But I really did. She just messaged after our first one. It was our very first show. I was all excited. My very first DM was, "You're fat." Good looking.
Oh my God.
But this pot that we're seeding right now, the soil that we're planting in here is our voice, right? My mother used to cry about how her entire life she felt like no one could hear her, no matter how loud she screamed, no matter how hard our community tried, she was voiceless. And now they fucked up, and they gave us a media, they gave us a venue to where the world can hear us, right? This is why, people talk about all these incidences of police brutality and murder as if it's new. As if this is new. No, what you're not understanding is this has been going on for generations. You're just now seeing it.
Right.
We have now the capability to record it and allow the world to view it in its rawest capacity.
Right.
You can't stop us from Facebook Living it, right? It used to be we can just take your camera away and take the film.
Oh yeah.
Right? But now you can't do it because it's being broadcast live and men and women are recording it and we're sending it out for the world to hear our voice.
And that was actually a tool that was very important to the people that were on the ground during the protest and commotion, because they were snatching people up, like unmarked cars were, we already the news, they had white nationalists up there working with the police, the feds was up there. So when people were recording live, the police were less likely to pop up, That was something that we were telling everybody, make sure somebody's recording, make sure you're recording.
And broadcasting.
Yeah.
And broadcasting, right? So like I said, I know many men in law enforcement. What I love is like out here in Caledonia, I know most of the officers out here. When I see an encounter with an officer going down, I start my live, I record it, and they support it, right? I've never had an officer tell me to stop recording. I've had him ask me what I was doing, and I've explained to him, respectfully and kindly, I'm recording the interaction to make sure you're protected and he's protected as well, right? I am making sure that all parties here are protected 100%. And, they'll turn and be like, body cam's on, but go ahead and thank you, right? For me, that's law enforcement officers at their finest. All right, cool. Whatever you record, you record. We're recording right now as well. Feel free. I respect your right. Thank you very much. I'm going to continue to record. You know what I mean? But it's so rare nowadays that you get that. And, it's funny because just like I was saying, one of my friends was talking about how why are we always hearing about this now? We didn't hear about this before. Why is it so bad now? And I'm trying to explain to her, it's not any worse than it was. This is life in America, right, being exposed as life in America.
Yeah.
This is growing up in East LA and South Central as a child, something that I viewed all of the time. This is a normality that people don't understand is normal because they've been sheltered in their own homes and in their own communities where this doesn't affect them. They don't have a gun store and a liquor store on every corner. You're not allowed to put a liquor store in the suburbs.
Right.
Right? But my mother, who lives right here in Racine, I can walk a half a block and hit three. 3 liquor stores in half a block. 4 bars. 3 liquor stores. I can name them off right now. We got JD's, we got Olympics, and we got Nick's. Right? We got the Tropical, we got the Reruns, we got the Go Club, and the other bar, I think is Marquis now. I don't remember what it is, but it's right there on Douglas.
Oh, yeah.
I live out here in Caledonia. There's one bar. It's all the way down on the corner of an industrial street, well away from our community and our house. There's a gas station down the road that where you can get beer or liquor on, but it's by it's out of the neighborhood. I have a park in every corner, in every cul-de-sac of my neighborhood. There's a park, every cul-de-sac, right? And they call them, I didn't know what they were. I see kids cutting between houses. And from the hood, when you see a kid cut through the house, they running from somebody. Some mama finna whoop up. So, the neighbor kids chasing them down. They running from the dog, right? And I'm like, ooh, that old white lady's gonna fuck one of them kids up, right? And she's waving at him. And I asked my girl, I'm like, where the fuck are them kids going? And she said, there's a park back there, babe. I said, a park back there? How you get to the park? She said, you walk through that yard. I said, I walked through the yard. She says, it's a pass-through. A pass-through? Yeah, it's a half block. The half block. All this shit alien to me, right? We don't have that in the hood. Half block. The pass-through, right? I was like, she's talking Chinese at me. She grew up out here. And so sure enough, I walked through between these people's yards, and there's a little section 3 feet wide for the public to use, and there's a park back there. Where's the park in my hood? You gotta go to school.
Man, look, being from Memphis 10, man, growing up in North Memphis, it was always fun to go to East Memphis, bro. Because I knew I didn't have to fight anybody. I could be over there. I could chill all day long. My auntie was always cooking. I wasn't afraid over there. We could go into the neighbor's yard and jump on the trampoline with no problems.
They do that here at my house. We got a trampoline and a big old wooden place that the kids come over here and just play. I'll be like, who's that? And my girl will be like, oh, that's Jaden and Jeffrey and Allie and Billy. And I'm like, fuck are their parents? Where'd they come from? Right? But the most shocking thing for me out here was Halloween, right? In the hood, you can put your thing on, you knock on the door, hey, let me get some candy and go. Out here, they put up tables at the end of their driveways, right? Tables with chairs, and they put big bowls of candy with candy bars in them, right? And then the second table is the adult treats. And you walk through the neighborhood, and they give you little shots of hot toddy liquor or tequila or a beer, right? So I don't drink, right? That ain't my thing. So I'm handing out candy, and the lady's like, well, where's our shot? At the bar? What? And they'll just be tipsy. They'll be walking with their kids in their hand like 5-year-olds. Hey, James, how you doing?
It's lit.
Right, and there's something to this neighborhood.
But even that ability to be comfortable outside drunk, knowing that
we can't do that.
You can't do that. I just moved from the east side of Milwaukee, and I had people. A lot of people say it's a good neighborhood. It's all right. It's a lot of bars over there and stuff. But when I tell you, almost every night there was a group of drunk white college students, loud, cussing, just obnoxious.
Have they been shot?
Not once ever have the police been called on them, called over there.
Boys will be boys.
Huh?
Boys will be boys.
Right.
What is their boys?
The whole rioting narrative, you see people rioting over sports games, and it's not a negative connotation with it. It's just, they're boys will be boys, they're having fun or whatever, But yeah, just and what you said, Andre, it just makes me think of what that does to the psyche when you're constantly living in fear. It changes you,
And that's my thing, is just how do we change that narrative from men being the authority? And this is exactly why, so here's the thing, right? So quick story time. Me and Adwoa was we were on the e-board together for the Black Student Union, right?
Right.
And the thing is, it's just like, okay, cool, I'm gonna be the president. She's my VP. We got everybody else on here. Is just like, okay, cool. President's gonna do this. President's gonna do this. VP gonna do this. In my head, it was just like, I had to tell Adwoa this. It's just like, okay, I spearhead things to learn. Like, I will like, I'll make a statement to learn something because iron sharpens iron. Dude, when I
Absolutely.
tell you, when I tell you that I learned so much from this lady, we bumped heads so much. It was so funny. And I can give you a moment that's really funny, and people who will watch this will know what I'm talking about. We were at a meeting because we developed something as a team called Know Your Roots. Okay. And Know Your Roots was really, really great. Different days, different weeks, and remind me if I'm wrong, Adwoa, but different weeks we would come up with something new. We would come up with a segment, and we would bring in Black history, we would bring in the Black business, and then we would bring in what's going on in the community, basically, for that segment. And so at the end of our segment during discussion time, I was just like, hey, maybe we should get the police here and try to talk to them. The way that she looked will forever be embedded
Just
into my.
like so stank. I promise you, I did not even realize I was looking at him upside his head like that, but I definitely was.
So listen,
I'm very expressive, like I have to work on my poker face.
as a man who grew up in a home with nothing but sisters, right? Let me tell you something. The fear that women learn how to instill in men is real.
With
Right.
different look.
I was with my girl at the grocery store, and this girl, she was my age, early 40s or something, had turned and yelled at her son about whooping his ass if he didn't calm down and sit down. And I went to sit down. And she got to laugh, and she was like, "Baby, I didn't mean you." And I'm like, "I didn't know you just turned I'm going to sit down. I apologize. I did not mean to do whatever it is that angered you, ma'am. Please do not hurt me. I apologize in advance. I realize I'm a man and I'm not very intelligent. What do I need to do to stop you from whooping me?"
Monty, that look burned a hole through my soul. You feel me?
Oh, yeah.
And to this day, I think about that, and it's funny because we can look back and laugh at it. But that whole look, I look back on that, and I look at the male ego, right? I look at the authority that we have, and this is why, like, before I got on, I was just like, how can we protect our women? But how can we protect our women if we consider ourselves an authority figure?
Right.
And that's the issue, right? So we have to break those norms down, bro. Like, women, and women are very strong, bro. I can't give birth, fam. I can't give birth and live to tell about it, bro. I can't give birth to a child, raise a child, take care of a home, and expect a man just to bring in money and not consider myself strong, bro.
Right.
That's powerful, bro. And that's something that I realized over the course of this year. I've always had a respect for women, especially our women. But the thing that I saw this past year is how much credit we don't give our women, how much we degrade them rather than treat them as gold.
Yeah.
And it's just like, bro, this that's why I said that's a serious question. How can we better protect our women?
Beings who who have independent thoughts and it's two things that you just made me think of. But one, I think a lot of times, and I know this is not just black men, but I'm speaking on black men just because I'm thinking of our enslavement and colonization and how a lot of the behaviors that we see today, the misogyny, that comes from our enslavement. We were conditioned to like the whole pimp culture, that comes from they used to force black men to take wagons full of black men, women, and children to sex them for them to be raped. And that position of being the one driving the wagon, it was a little bit better than being the one being raped, So it's deep, it's like deep psychological damage, and I think it's a lot of black men, and I don't want to say just black men, but just men, period. Really, what that's rooted in, and I think, I would hope it would encourage them to shift that.
Yeah.
That's what I tell a lot of black men. Like when I see them degrading women and being misogynistic, I'm like, you acting like your oppressor, and you don't even realize it. You don't even realize what you're doing. You're really treating us the way they treat you. The way they treat us.
And Adwoa, it's so crazy that you bring that up, right? So we read a lot, and we when we read, we try to like see the images, of what's going on, like the horrific images, and it's crazy, right? I watched on Hulu. I watched the later version of Roots, right? So the whole time I was watching that, I sat there and analyzed that show.
The new Roots?
Yeah, it's a new Roots.
I saw it.
I sat up there and I analyzed everything on there.
Yeah.
I analyzed the type of community they had on the plantation. Mm-hmm. I analyzed how the history kept on. It started to get lost during the generations. Mm-hmm. I analyzed how the men treated the women, multiple kids. The women were supposed to take care of the house. I analyzed all of that, and I was just like, damn. Mm-hmm. Like, this is crazy. How can I break that cycle so that my sons don't think the way that I was brought up?
Right. And I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with healing, that healing work, and taking the time to really a lot of these behaviors and traditions, that have been really put into our communities to destroy us and to separate us and bring us down. Yeah. I also go ahead, Monteazul.
So one of my mentors, Gene Redhill, my uncle Gene, and his brothers Mike, Sonny, and Roy Redhill. I met them in the mid '90s in Green Bay Maximum Correctional Institute. They came in and sacrificed an entire day every month to dedicate to helping us worship by running a sweat lodge and teaching us. And Uncle Gene runs a domestic violence men's group in Oneida. And we discuss our past as a people. And, there's many different native tribes here in the United States. A lot of our customs were different, but one of the customs that was almost universal was the respect and adoration we gave women. In my tribe, we looked at women as a special creature because they were able to carry two souls. For the entirety of my life, I will only have my soul. That's it. But for a woman, during her lifetime, she will have more than one soul, and a soul is created out of her, right? A piece of her life is taken, brought to the womb, it's cared for, it's, protected, and then it's given life, right? And over the years, we have lost the path that we were on, that we were supposed to be on, right? And you're absolutely correct in the statement of we've forgotten and have become to act as our oppressors, right? When we're hurt, we need to find someone that we can hurt to make us feel less hurt or make us feel more whole, right? We can't see that instead of running to our women for their healing, right? We're hurting our women in a false sense of healing ourselves. I can't heal myself, right? I don't have that. That's not a part of my medicine, right? I need my partner to help me heal. I need not just my partner, but I need the women of my community to turn to for guidance and for counsel and for healing and for help, right? So in the Native system, it's called health, hope, and happiness, right? These are the things that medicine provides us, and we can't have that without women, right? The woman is the circle that binds us. They give us these things. They teach us us as men. That's why we call the earth our mother, right? If you look at a sweat lodge is a womb full of life on the the body of the mother. It's a half house, right? It lumps over the flat earth, right? Then you crawl into it and crawl out of it like a child, right? We go in there to be cleansed by the mother, right? We go in there to suffer and to heal and to cleanse. And then we rebirth ourselves as we come out of that lodge and we come back into the world fresh and clean because the mother gave of her womb to cleanse us. And I think that's something men in general don't understand anymore. And that's a part of our pain, right? Yeah. That loss that we don't know of is a part of that emptiness. We had talked in the earlier part of this evening about that pain that we feel that my uncle, would always tell me that's ancestral rage, it's ancestral pain, it's ancestral hurt. You could have been born in the perfect circumstances and lived a perfect life and still felt that hole inside of you that your ancestors are streaming through your soul. They're streaming through your spirit, right? They want you to live a life that will honor them, that will give them a justification for their death and a righteousness to your future, right? Our ancestors stream it through us, and we don't know. We just hurt, and we lash out, and we scream, and we fight, and we see the poverty we live in, and we see the oppression that we accept, and we need to lash out, and our women catch the brunt of that, and our children catch the brunt of that, right? And it's a horrible thing, man. Adwoa, Andre, I love you guys, man. I am so happy that fate brought you guys into my life. Not even for our community, our responsibility, Racine, although I think you have done a great thing and that many people are going to be able to benefit from our conversation and learn a point of view that they might not have heard or expand on their point of view and grow. Remove that. I'm grateful that I get to talk to you guys and call you friends outside of this. Now, as a pescatarian, you don't eat fish, correct?
That's right.
Well, So what other foods don't you eat? Is it just shellfish and fish?
So I'm allergic to shellfish. And I've actually been, I want to say maybe about almost 5 months pescatarian now. I haven't eaten any chicken, turkey, beef, any other type of meat. Just fish like cod, catfish, trout, swai, and salmon. I actually made salmon tonight.
I love salmon.
Yes. And the thing is just like when I don't eat fish, I do vegan meals or vegetarian meals. And so far I've benefited so much. I have so much energy. I'm so healthy.
Is that why you have a neck and I don't?
Listen, I went from 210 pounds, 210 pounds, and today I weighed in at 177.
Wow.
Don't forget, listen, a lot of people don't understand. Our Black community is affected by heart disease more than any other community in the world, right? They say salt and grease kill Black men more than anything else there is put together. Like, we could add any three things and put them together, and heart disease will still win on that death tip. So living healthy is a wonderful thing and a beautiful thing, and it's a thing we need to teach our brothers and sisters of minority descent. You had said something about that earlier about the rate of diabetes. All of these things are because genetically, right, historically, we didn't have these things, so our bodies still to this day don't know how to process them correctly.
Right.
The reason why diabetes affects Native American households at a rate of 4 times of any other household in the United States is because Native Americans never had processed sugar, the sugar that they use, and our bodies cannot process it. We're allergic to it because it's a poison, right? Whereas Europeans had it for hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years, their bodies understood how to use it, they've become used to it, and they were able to process it. For us, it was poison, right? So yeah, absolutely.
That's why it's such it's so unfortunate that through the transatlantic slave trade, we lost so much of ourselves, the knowledge of where we come from, where we originate from, who our people are. I know that my people came from Mississippi. I know I don't need a DNA test to tell me that I have ancestors that came from Africa. I feel that trauma and that pain of that voyage across the Atlantic. I also know that I have ancestors who were Natchez, who were from the Natchez people. So that helps a little, but I think it's just so unfortunate that the majority of us can't really trace our roots back to know just our cultural practices and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm also plant-based. I don't like the vegan label because if you catch me eating some salmon, you know what I'm saying? Then tell me. I really wanted some salmon that day. But yeah, I think it's important to not for me, I transitioned into a plant-based diet for health reasons. I was experiencing a lot of complications with my uterus, like cysts and stuff like that. And every time I went to the doctor, they would try to put me on birth control, which was not a cure or anything to help with the condition. It was more so relieving the symptoms. So I did some research for myself. I started using herbs more, doing like herbal teas, and also stopped eating meat. I first started with pork and red meat. I immediately noticed that because I was always a child that was prone to migraine. When I stopped eating red meat, that decreased by 90%. So yeah, I think that for me, it's not about being rigid as far as your diet or being hard on yourself about what you eat, but just cultivating healthy, um, behaviors when it comes to your diet. Eating fruits and vegetables on a regular basis. We're just very heavy on the meat consumption, and another thing about that, we know that the way that we used to consume meat is not the same as we do now. Like, in indigenous cultures, they had a respect for life, and they honored the kill and they made sure that it was cured properly and all that. Whereas today, animals they're tortured. Like a lot of cows can't even walk. They're pumped with so many steroids that they can't even walk and enjoy, chewing on the green grass or whatever. They just created just to consume. And I think that energy and that trauma does carry, over into us. I think what we eat you know, we are what we eat. That combined with what the steroids and the chemicals and stuff do to us. So yeah, it's important to cultivate better practices when it comes to our eating. And it's difficult because a lot of stuff we see as is rooted in our culture and tradition, you know, like chitlins and stuff like that. But it really is plant-based food.
And see, that's crazy that you bring that up too, because like switching over to the Mediterranean diet, it's like familiar territory for me, and it feels great. Like I feel great for choosing it, and you know, I actually wanted to do an African ancestry test this year to see what part of Africa my ancestors come from,
Yeah.
because like I've been so encouraged to do it, and I've been wanting to just trace it all back, because Monty, I think we had a conversation about when how I like to be preferred as. I like to be preferred to as a Black American, because I feel
You don't know
I
your
don't
history.
I don't know my history like that. You know, you call me a Black American native of West of Memphis, Tennessee, and that's the thing, man. It's just like I just want to be closer to my roots, and that way I'll be proud to call myself African American.
There
Learn
is
my
a
culture.
there's a deep sense of pride that I never knew until recently. I have in knowing my family history,
Yeah.
right? Knowing that my father was adopted by a Danish family, but his original family came here from Scotland, right? And finding out about his ancestry, and then knowing my mother's Mexican Native American roots and what tribe we had come from, and you know the mythos that came from behind it. So being able to identify myself as a Scottish Apache Mexican, right? There's a sense of deep pride for all three of those backgrounds, right? You know, I want to learn the history on them. I want to learn the ancestry on them. I want to learn what it is. And for me, when I think about men and women here in the United States who don't know, they don't know. And as a country, I included, have never thought about it on that level. He's an African American. He's a Black American. He is here. He's a part of our. But where did his ancestors come from?
Right.
What tribe did his ancestors belong to? Where can we go so that he can look up his history, so he can feel a connection to his ancestors? Because that's just as important for him as it is for me as a native man, right? And I identify myself as native, and there's a reason why the white society had deemed it anybody who had, you know, if you had 190th drop of blood of anything but Caucasian, you couldn't be Caucasian, you know, whatever it was 164th. So obviously I cannot be listed. Hi, what's up, buddy?
What's up?
Hey, what's happening?
He's mad because
I'm
it's
always
bedtime.
minority man, regardless of my father's history. Hi, buddy. Hey, you know, we hit our second hour now.
I'm like, whoa.
We hour 2 of our 1 hour program, and I'm okay with that. That's the comfortability that I feel with you guys. At no point in this conversation have I felt like, oh, I need to get off of here. Look, we're down to 1 viewer. We were all the way up at like 20 viewers at one point. Hey, it's like, okay, hour 2,
Right.
laundry, kids got to go to bed. It's 8 o'clock. Monty, what are you doing? Listen, man, they can watch later. I don't care.
Yeah, guys,
but thank you guys.
Listen, no problem, man. You know me.
We got to put the baby to bed too. So
I got to do the daddy
Yep.
duties, man. Listen, Adwoa, thank you for taking time out to speak with this man. I knew that you guys would kick it off. I definitely felt like, you know, your voice really needs to be heard. Like, if you could teach somebody like me something, or you could teach the world something. Monty, thank you for having her. Thank you for having me.
And thank you both. Thank you, Andre, for feeling like it was important to connect me to this platform. Thank you, Monty.
I look forward to doing it again.
Discussion, yeah, because I feel like we just scratched the surface, and it's
Barely.
so we can talk for 2 hours, but I'm really inspired by the ideas that we've exchanged, and yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So, Andre, thank you so much for needing a mover and calling me, introducing me to Adwoa, and then us moving her.
Right.
And then us moving her before we even moved you. I'd really like to thank my producer right now, Julie. I love you. Your friendship means everything to me and my family. I know right now for you it's 2 a.m. and you have to get up for work tomorrow. I apologize for keeping you up, sweetheart. You're in our prayers and our thoughts. Adwoa, thank you so much for talking to me. I've learned a lot. Andre, I learned a lot every time we talk. It's always a wonderful experience to meet somebody who's passionate about our community in the same manners as I am, especially another minority man. I think our minority women are much more in tune with the needs of our community than we are as men. And I think we should take a step back to learn from them and spotlight that, because without them, we can't grow. But thank you guys. Listen, to my viewers who stuck through us. I got one viewer who stuck through all the way till now. They're still watching.
Shout out to them.
You are. Thank you very much. For those of you who listened earlier and who are going to listen later at an easier convenience, we appreciate your input. We had a lot of comments tonight. We had a lot of interaction. We appreciate that, and we love you guys for that. The only way we can get better is by doing it together. And that doesn't mean, I know some of my viewers have spoken about the fact that I use our community as a terminology, and express the fact that we're talking about the poor minority communities, that they were outsiders and you're not. If you care, if your heart is in the same place that what we're talking about, then you are a part of our community, no matter where you're from. If you're fighting for the right, then you're fighting with us. We're standing here together, screaming so that people can hear us. We're screaming so that people can feel us. That sentence, "Can you hear us now?" That's what we've been screaming, and that's what we are. We're begging to just hear us, recognize humanity for what it is. So thank you guys. Love you guys. I look forward to talking to you again. You guys have a wonderful night. God bless. We will see you soon.